Edwards, the Mindset Geek from GoToEl.com, and welcome back. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about two very different processes, writing and editing. Now, yes, this does apply to writing very specifically. It doesn't have to apply to writing a book. It can apply to writing a blog post. It can apply to writing an email. It can apply to writing the content for a course that you're preparing, but is a writing thing. However, I would maintain that the advice I'm about to give you actually has a wider application as well, because the context for this, we are thinking all week, it's the very last episode of week 3 of our month-long preparation for NaNoWriMo. There's a hashtag on Instagram, Preptober. I didn't realise that when I started this process. Otherwise, I'd have used that hashtag an awful lot more. But Preptober, for me, that's about getting you mentally ready for next month. And all we've been doing this week, all of week 3, we've been focusing on the messy middle. And one of the things I wanted to take a moment to remind you about, as you think about the messy middle, you get to that bit where things just feel a bit is to remind you that writing and editing are two different tasks. Now, unfortunately, and fortunately, for reasons I'll explain in a moment, but unfortunately, on my computer, and probably most people's computers, unless you've changed the default settings, when you type something now, it underlines spelling mistakes in red. You can turn it off, I think. Now, it's handy because, you know, if you're writing an email or you're preparing something, it's quite handy now to have those errors. You haven't got to run spell check officially. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I even ran a spell check because we just do it automatically. However, the problem with that then is if you are there, you're in the flow and you're writing, and then you've got these red lines that keep popping up showing you that you've made a typo, that you haven't quite spelt the word correctly, that you've slipped over the word slightly, it's very disconcerting and it will slow down your flow. Because when you're writing, you're using one part of your brain. When you're editing, you're using another part of your brain. And no, I do not have scientific evidence for that. I haven't taken a scan of the brain to see which sides light up when you do writing versus which sides light up when you do editing. But they are two different tasks at least, and they require different skill sets and a different kind of focus. So I would encourage you, if next month you are specifically thinking about writing, and writing a book, you know, a long form piece of writing, I'd encourage you to dig into the settings on your computer and find out where you can turn off that default where you underline the spelling mistakes, which may sound kind of counterintuitive because we're so used to having those mistakes underlined. But for the purposes of actually getting your content written and getting your ideas out of your head and onto the screen, having that spelling, the automatic spell check turned off is really helpful, because then you haven't got the computer screaming at you every time your fingers slip up. How this applies in a wider context, because I did promise you that it has wider applications. Think about your big goal or project. Maybe you're not writing a book. Maybe you're not writing anything. Maybe you're preparing for the next big move in your business, or maybe you're preparing for some other, maybe an event, whatever it is that you are getting ready for in your business. There will be a process that involves creating content of some kind. I'm using that word content very loosely because, for example, imagine you're writing a piece of software. You're writing software so that your content in that context is the actual software. It's the code that you're pulling together. And I don't know enough about code to know if this is strictly correct or not. But imagine your big goal for next month is to program a computer game. We're going to say game, okay? With the caveat that I know nothing about how to program computer games. But bear with me, because this analogy will hopefully help you see how this writing, editing, two tasks thing applies to your context. So imagine then that you are a game designer, and next month your big goal is to program a new game. So imagine you sitting there in front of your computer with whatever software you use to do that, and you're there writing the code, or maybe you're drawing the characters, or whatever that looks like. Take the example of drawing the characters. You're not then going to go back At the moment where you're creating those characters, you don't want to be thinking about going back and taking off any rough edges, or the nose is slightly too big, or the eyes are slightly too close together, or whatever. You want to actually be getting your ideas out there, creating that character that you're drawing. Or if you're coding something, you want to get all the code out to get it working in its most basic form. And then you go back and edit and you polish and you clean it up. See, it really does have an application outside of writing. They're two different tasks. They're two different parts of your brain. I'm going to maintain that. I'm going to do a Google research afterwards and actually find out if anybody has scanned the brain during those two different tasks. But they are, even if they don't light up different parts of the brain, they are two different tasks. They're two different skill sets. So I wanted to encourage you and remind you, whatever project that you are working on, whatever you're getting ready for, remember, write, then edit. And by all means, write, edit a bit and go back to write. For the purposes, I should just say, if you are doing NaNoWriMo, if you're working with me in Rent-A-Boss, you are not editing in November. I'm just saying, putting that out there right now. We are not editing in November, we are writing in November. Even if you're doing this on your own, if you're doing NaNoWriMo on your own, or some version of NaNoWriMo, if you have a big writing goal to do next month, do not edit next month, okay? Excellent. That said, if you're not writing a book in a month, or not attempting to write as much of it as possible as you can in a month, fine, be more flexible, do a bit of writing and a bit of editing. It might be like our software example, you might have to write a bit of code and then test it and tweak it. So that might be part of the process. But they really are two different skill sets. And so I just wanted to encourage you and remind you that you don't need to do both at the same time. And actually it's better for your brain and it's better for the process that you don't try and do both at the same time. Okay? Excellent. Speaking of NaNoWriMo next month and Rent-A-Boss, this is your final reminder via the podcast that the early bird pricing ends on Sunday. If you're sick of hearing about it, if you're like, yeah, I know, Elle, you've told me already, I'm already signed up, or yeah, I know, Elle, but I'm not writing a book next month. Okay, you'll be glad to know next week I am not going to mention the word early bird. I am going to remind you that Rent-A-Boss is about to start once or twice, but this is your final reminder that final reminder that the early bird pricing for Rent-A-Boss ends on Sunday night. And after that, it goes up by 50%. So if you are going to join us, do it now, yeah? Because I would love then next week we can have that one-on-one time together to get you ready for November. So it's rentaboss.uk, not .com, .com was taken, rentaboss.uk to find out more and join us. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Smile, have yourself a delightful day. I've been Elle from GoToElle.com. Take care. Bye-bye.